Perhaps the greatest evidence that the old world order is being intentionally allowed to decay is the testimony of a medical doctor I met in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in early 1989 during a speaking engagement. This doctor met me after the speech and told me an incredible story. He told me that he was a pediatrician and that he had interned at a hospital in Pittsburgh in 1965. He told me that the doctor who was the head of his department became a good friend of his during the time they worked together. That doctor's name, the second doctor's name, was Richard L. Day, also a pediatrician. A short time later, sometime in 1965, Dr. Day left the hospital and became the national medical director of Planned Parenthood in New York City. He held this job for 3 years, quitting in 1968 to become a professor of pediatrics at a New York university. In March of 1969, Dr. Day came back to Pittsburgh and gave an address to the Pittsburgh Pediatric Society. This is the announcement of that meeting in the bulletin of the Allegheny County Medical Journal, and that's Dr. Day's speech circled in about the top half. And this is the copy of Dr. Day's obituary after he died in June of 1989. Dr. Day gave a speech entitled Family Planning, Infant Mortality, Gene Frequency, Abortion, and Other Considerations. He quickly made it known that he was not there to talk about medical problems because he wanted to talk about, quote, other considerations, unquote. After getting past the amenities, he started his speech by making this comment. I am going to talk about some of the things that I learned about during my 3 years in New York. If I see anyone tape recording my message, I will walk off the stage. If I see anyone making any notes, I will walk off the stage and not continue. If anyone says that I said anything that I tell you today, I will publicly disavow your statement and deny that I said it. And in fact, even if you do speak about what you'll hear today, no one will believe you anyway. After Dr. Day completed his speech, the doctor telling me the story told me that he went out to his car and wrote down every comment that he could remember about what Dr. Day had said. He also said that as thoughts and recollections have occurred to him since then, he has written them down. This doctor sent me a tape of his recollections, and what he remembered will be what I will be sharing with you today. Dr. Day said that he had found an organized force during his stay in New York City. This organized force is the force behind communism. This, of course, is not a new revelation because this is precisely what Dr. Carroll Quigley taught President Bill Clinton, and I have known this was true for some 30 years. I want you to remember that these comments that we're now going to talk about were made in 1969, over 25 years ago, by a man who apparently had been made aware of them by the very people who were making the changes. The doctor went on in his speech. This organized force is so powerful that it fears no one or anything. This organized force believes that no one can stop it. And then the doctor started telling the audience what he had discovered. The doctor telling the story said that these remembered thoughts are not in any particular order, but are listed in the order that he remembered them. Each is just a short sentence explaining in concise form what the doctor said. This is what the doctor told the audience on March the 20th, 1969, in no particular order. He said, there is a timetable constructed by those inside this organized force. Suicide will be promoted in its own right. He's talking about the future, of course. There will be a planned economic collapse of the United States to further the acceptance of the global system. The population must be limited to 2 children per family. The government will promote contraception by making it universally acceptable. He said this in 1969. Sex outside of marriage will be promoted. He went on to say that men would become more feminized and women more masculine. Sex would be more out in the open and encouraged outside of marriage. Travel would become a privilege to increase control of individuals and families. Bridges and roads would be allowed to deteriorate. We would become desensitized to violence. Musicians would use coded messages to reach the young people. He went on to say terrorism would increase so that the public would relinquish control of their lives to an increasing government. Abortion will become normal and tax supported. Fathers would have no say in the abortion issue. He said this 3 years before the Roe versus Wade decision making abortion was legal. Homosexuality will be encouraged. Ultimately, reproduction will be without sex, meaning it will all be done in test tubes. Divorce will be more prevalent. Living with your partner would become preferred. Women will be encouraged to work outside the family. Men will be constantly transferred by their companies to produce tension within the family. When I told this to a friend of mine who worked for IBM, he told me that he now understood why his fellow engineers joked that IBM meant, quote, "I've been moved," unquote. Euthanasia, meaning the killing of old people, will become common. They will be declared to not be useful anymore in the new society. Costs of medical care will increase so that old people cannot obtain it. Medicine will become tightly controlled. If you don't have a job, you won't be able to get medical attention. Medical care will be keyed to your job. If you have a job, you will get medical attention. Going to a hospital will become a privilege, not a right. Later, only those with medical insurance will be allowed into a hospital. Hospitals will be used to confine criminals as a way of using drugs and chemicals to alter their behavior. Doctors will become employees of companies, no longer to be considered as the employee of the patient. Soon, listen to this, soon new diseases will appear for which there will be no cure. He said this years before, AIDS was intentionally created by the World Health Organization. That's a whole other subject, one of which I won't cover in this lecture today. But that's true. AIDS was a man-created disease, and it sounds like Dr. Day was predicting it back in 1969. He went on to say that the purpose of these new diseases will be to reduce the population. He also went on to say that religion will be destroyed. He commented that the Bible will be rewritten with key words changed or altered. Education will slowly reduce the amount of information transmitted. Kids will not learn as much. The school year will be prolonged, including the teaching of students during the summer. Not everyone will be allowed to own books. He went on to say the government will be getting into gambling. The drug use will increase with the purpose of increasing law enforcement. He said music will become worse with the specific purpose of changing the thoughts of the listeners. Identification will become required with something being implanted in the hand or forehead of every American. I'll be specifically showing you in a few more minutes that the latest technology in this field is just around the corner. Dr. Day continued, food consumption will be reduced so that its distribution will have to be controlled, and no fugitive from justice will be able to get food. Weather will become controllable to cause droughts and floods to reduce the food supply. He said world government will occur with an increase in the power of the United Nations. Inflation of the money supply would lead to a single banking system. Taxes would become progressive, meaning that the rich will be taxed to a higher degree so that few could assemble wealth. Credit would be extremely available so that many will go into heavy debt. Private ownership of housing will cease. High costs of housing would prevent new purchasers from buying homes. Census information would provide personal information. The number of bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, etc. will become part of the census information. He said this in 1969. Real-life heroes who exemplify old-fashioned values will disappear. Entertainers and celebrities, rather than the national heroes of the past, would be promoted as the heroes of children because they would advocate a wide-open lifestyle. I want you to remember, as I said several times during that explanation, that these comments were made in 1969, over 25 years ago. I think that you can see that as I read them, most of these comments have come true. So it appears as if Dr. Day was telling us the truth. You might remember that the doctor said identification will become required with something being implanted in the head, or the hand rather, or forehead of every American. And I would now like to take a few moments to show you that this is closer than ever. The technology to implant a biochip into each American is now here, and there are those in America planning the date when we shall be asked to accept one in our body. This is a picture of just one of those biochips showing you just how big it is. That is, of course, an American 10-cent piece or dime to the right, and the biochip is on the left. so it is not very big. This is a tape being put on to an Illinois license plate as a means of identifying the automobile. This biochip is being implanted into the surface skin of the dog or a cat, in this case, a white puppy. This is a slide of a veterinarian using the scanning device to read the number of this particular dog. This is a part of the driver's license that has been computer scanned so that the young woman's picture and her thumbprint can be identified by the scanner. This is the biochip so small that it disappears on top of this particular thumb. This is the device attached to the windshield of a car so that a passing satellite can identify it from miles out in space. And here we see the recording device on a major highway. The U-shaped metal device over the highway will read the number in the windshield as each car passes underneath it. The biochip is already being used on dogs and cats in Los Angeles County, where it is mandatory that all owners are required to have their animals implanted with the biochip. This is a copy of an article written in the San Diego Union newspaper for November the 9th, 1991, announcing the details of the program to implant the dogs and the cats. This is a copy of an article in the April 2nd, 1989 Marin Independent Journal, a California newspaper that was written to discuss the details of this new biochip. The article quotes Tim Willard of the World Future Society, he's an executive officer, as saying this: conceivably, a number could be assigned at birth and go with a person throughout life. Most likely, it would be implanted on the back of the right or left hand for convenience. It could be used as a universal identification card that would replace credit cards, passports, and that sort of thing. At the checkout stand as a supermarket, you would simply pass your hand over a scanner and your bank account would automatically be debited. Now, this is an actual biochip, in this particular case, in a plastic case. You'll see it's not even a little over a quarter-inch long. And this is the actual biochip itself outside of a plastic case there on this piece of kind of orange paper. And this is the injector needle, the device that is currently being used to inject an animal with the biochip. And as we have seen, it could be used to inject humans in the near future. But even as bad and as impossible as all of this talk about the elimination of the old world order sounds, I want you to know the new world order is already in place in communist China. It's already here. China has had a strong 6,000-year-old tradition of family and religion, but all of that has been eliminated by the communist government in China, right now, today, in China. Couples are are married by the state and then separated. All married men live together with the other married men. Married women live with other married women. Couples may see each other on Saturday mornings for 3 hours between 9 and noon. In other words, there is no family unit anywhere on the communes in China. If the married couple wants children, they are permitted by the government to have one child. But that child is taken away from the parents shortly after birth and raised by the commune. The parents are allowed one Saturday morning visit with their child from 9 to noon, but if the parents show any affection during that visit, the parents will be allowed no further visits with their child. Chinese tradition states that the oldest child is to provide for his parents when they become old. So if that one child that they are allowed to have by the communist government is female, the parents oftentimes kill that baby and then take her dead body to the Communist Party and then turn her in so that they can obtain another permit for a child. And the result is predictable. There are more little boys than there are little girls. This is not a good sign for the future because the Chinese won't be able to keep their population at an even keel if they can't find enough women to produce offspring. The article says this, that for a bribe of $50, a doctor will tell whether a Chinese woman is pregnant with a boy or a girl. Then, if the pregnant woman finds out it is a girl, the parent gets an abortion. In other words, they want young boy children and not girl children. The article pointed out that the sex ratio of newborn children in China last year reached 119 boys for every 100 girls. And it went on to point out that more than 12% of all female babies were aborted. So in China, the family is making decisions to kill babies just because they are the wrong sex. And the reason they are doing that is because the communist state has determined that they have the right to control the family. Also in the community in China, there is no right to private property. There is no private ownership of any property, including housing. There is no right to practice your religious views. There is no right to travel. There is no right to engage in an occupation other than farm work. In other words, the New World Order is already in place in China, and it appears to be working. The New World Order is completely functioning in China. The communism that is the result of the Chinese Communist Revolution of 1923 to 1949 is working. And it might be important at this point to mention that it was the government of the United States that gave communism to China during the Bloody Revolution. It was the United States government that assisted Zhou Enlai and Mao Tse-tung in the intentional killing of as many as 60 million Chinese during the revolution, just so the government of the United States could give China the New World Order. The fact that it was the government of the United States that assisted the Chinese communists kill 60 million Chinese is covered in my book entitled The Unseen Hand. There is no question that 60 million Chinese people died so that the government of the United States could give China the New World Order. The experiment is working. Now, what all of this proves is that the old world order is crumbling right in front of our very eyes. Let me give you just one more example to summarize all that I've said in the last few minutes. What is happening is that good old-fashioned common sense is rapidly disappearing. Those things that we once held dear are being mocked, ridiculed, and abandoned. Those things that were once not talked about are coming out into the open. Those things that were once thought to be socially wrong are now being accepted. For instance, this little article appeared in our evening paper here in Tucson on February the 25th, 1993. It says that the 6th through 9th grade students are being asked about cannibalism in an essay contest run by the Maricopa Bar Association. Maricopa County is the county north of Tucson, and Phoenix, our state capital, is the county seat of that county. A bar association is, of course, an organization of lawyers banded together for a common purpose. The article went on to report that the students were being asked to respond to a hypothetical problem-solving exercise. The students were asked to consider what they would do if they were among 3 junior high friends trapped in a cave. Realizing that they can't live without food for more than 30 days, they decide to draw lots to see who will be killed so that the others can survive. A half hour after they kill one of the students, they are rescued. And the winners of this dilemma, or the winner rather, of this dilemma wins a $50 savings bond and a plaque. 50 years ago, the bar would have been disbanded for bringing up such a hideous subject in such a stupid essay contest, but today the Bar Association conducts this contest to see who can best murder one of their fellow students. Notice that the students in the essay contest were asked to accept the decision to kill one of their classmates by deciding which one of the 3 would be eliminated. To solve the problem, as stipulated by the Bar Association, you have to murder one of your fellow students. But this conclusion of the essay contest appears to be acceptable because the Maricopa Bar Association said that it was a subject worthy of discussion. Quite simply, all of the old restraints are crumbling. The old world order is crumbling before our very eyes. This is a picture of Al Gore, our new vice president. And this is a book he wrote in 1992 entitled The Earth in Balance. He also talked about changes coming to our civilization. I'd like to read the entire quote first through all the way, and then go back and attempt to explain what he meant. Here's what Al Gore wrote in 1992 on page 48. Check it out if you don't believe me. Page 48. Our challenge is to accelerate the needed change in thinking about our relationship to the environment in order to shift the pattern of our civilization to a new equilibrium. This change in thinking will also follow the pattern described in chaos theory, with little change evident until a threshold is passed. Mr. Gore went on, and then as key assumptions are modified, a flood of dramatic changes will occur all at once. Now let's see what Mr. Gore was talking about. I'd like to read that quote again, this time one section at a time, so that we can analyze just what Mr. Gore is trying to tell us. Here's what he wrote. Our challenge is to accelerate the needed change in thinking. Here Mr. Gore is telling us that the changes are desirable and that we must hasten the day when we create the new civilization. He continues, we must accelerate the needed change in thinking about our relationship to the environment. So we must change our thinking about the environment. Today we think that individuals own the environment through the right to own private property. We must change the thinking so that the government will own it. That would explain what he means here. He wants the government to own the environment so that the people cannot abuse it. He goes on, in order to shift the pattern of our civilization to a new equilibrium. We believe in the concept of private property in our current civilization. As I said, individuals own the environment under the God-given right to own private property. I would call that thought the equilibrium, the center point, the thought that is the center of all of our thinking about the environment. If we change it, we must make a new equilibrium, and that new thought is the thought that the government must own all the private property. So Mr. Gore is advocating a form of socialism here. Socialism means that the private property must be owned and controlled by the government. Al Gore continues, this change in thinking will also follow the pattern described in chaos theory. Now, I've not finished the book yet, so I don't know what he means by the phrase chaos theory, but I believe he means that this conspiracy will create the crisis that will lead to their desired chaos so that they can offer their desired solution to the chaos so that we will accept their new world order, a new civilization. Mr. Gore continues, with little change evident until a threshold is passed. Here Mr. Gore is saying that there is a single event coming, one that this conspiracy will create so that we will accept their new world order. He continues, then, as key assumptions are modified, a flood of dramatic changes will occur all at once. What Vice President Al Gore was saying was that there is a new civilization coming and that they will create a crisis in the environment to force us to accept it. If that happened, they would force upon us, quote, a flood of dramatic changes in our civilization, unquote. But Al Gore is not the only one talking about a new civilization. This is Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, one of the pioneer thinkers about the future of the world. She created an organization called the Theosophical Society in 1875 that published her books and lectures. She wrote a 2-volume set entitled Isis Unveiled in 1877, in which she stated, quote, the day is approaching when the world will receive the proofs that only ancient religions were in harmony with nature. So the religions of the world of today are out of harmony with nature, and Al Gore and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky are telling us that the new religion coming will put mankind in accord with the environment. Al Gore and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky are warning us that the old way of looking at things in the environment is obsolete, and that after the threshold is crossed, we'll receive a new way of looking at things. I'd like to return now to the book entitled The Externalization of the Hierarchy by Alice Bailey. This book was written in 1957, so she was one of the earliest to put this thought in writing. This is what she said on pages 278 and 279. The new era is coming, the new ideals, the new civilization. Notice, by the way, that Al Gore talked about a new civilization. Alice Bailey continued, the new modes of life, of education, of religious presentation, and of government are slowly precipitating, and she said, naught can stop them. So the new changes are coming, and no one can stop them. She was saying that the new world order is coming and that no one will stand in its way. She went on to point out that there are some people trying to stop this new civilization. She said they can, however, be delayed by the reactionary types of people, by the ultra-conservative and closed minds. She went on, they are the ones, those reactionaries and ultra-conservatives, are the ones who can and do hold back the hour of liberation. So the ultra-conservative types, meaning people like me, are delaying their plans of exposing them. And notice that she terms her plans the hour of liberation. We are going to be liberated from the old ideas by the new ideas. Man will be free when we adopt her program for the New World Order. This thought will be explored later in this lecture so that you will understand exactly why we thought we needed liberating. I'd like to go back and add another thought from Helena Petrovna Blavatsky on the same subject. She says this on page Roman numeral 7 of her book entitled ISIS Unveiled. The drift of modern thought is palpably in the direction of liberalism in religion as well as science. Each day brings the reactionists. Now here she's talking about those who favor keeping the old world order, the old civilization. So each day brings the reactionists nearer to the point where they must surrender the despotic authority over the public conscience, which they have so long enjoyed and exercised. So there are people hanging on to their old world order, and someday those of us who live the way we are living our lives must surrender to those who want to change our civilization. And then she tells us what is coming. She writes, our work, then, is a plea for the recognition of the anciently universal wisdom religion. So the way to dissolve the old world order is through religion so that it will replace the old. There is a new civilization that is coming that will replace the old. There is a new way of doing things that will replace the old. And those new ways of doing things is called the New World Order. This is Albert Pike. He was a leading member of the Masons, an organization I will identify a little later in this lecture. And he also talked about change. He wrote this book entitled Morals and Dogma, perhaps the most important book ever written by any member of the Masonic Lodge. In this book, on page 734, he says this, there is in nature one most potent force by means whereof a single man who could possess himself of it and should know how to direct it, could revolutionize and change the face of the world. This force was known to the ancients. He said, it was adored in the sacred rites of the temple under the hieroglyphic figure of Baphomet and the hermaphroditic goat of Mendes. We will explore the god known as Baphomet and the goat of Mendes later in this lecture. But Mr. Pike was saying that those who know who this God is have a force in their hands that can revolutionize the way we live our lives. We have been examining that force and will continue to do so throughout the remainder of this lecture. One of the ways we are being prepared to accept this New World Order is through the media. And I think it would be interesting to ask and then answer the question, what are the purposes of Geraldo Rivera, Sally Jesse Raphael, Phil Donahue, and Oprah Winfrey? And the answer is simple. Their job is simply to tell us daily that the old world order is falling apart right before our eyes. Adultery, child abuse, alcoholism, drug use, parental disputes, homosexuality, lesbianism, and all of the other traditional aberrations are being shown on these programs to be quite normal and expected. These talk shows are showing us daily that marriage leads to divorce and to wife abuse. Parenting leads to child abuse. Raising children leads to disagreements. And all of this is not fun. So once we believe that, we can change how we live. They are telling us, don't get married, don't raise children, don't love your husband, because if you do, he will beat you. Don't discipline your children. They can get along perfectly well without your interference. This is the reason these shows are on the networks. They are showing us that the old ways no longer work. And the reason is clear. We are being taught that the old ways of doing things, called the old world order, is no longer adequate to meet the needs of the people. And that we must concern ourselves with replacing these mores with new ones called the New World Order. And all of this was predicted in George Orwell's book entitled 1984. This book was written in 1949 by a socialist who saw exactly what socialism would lead to. So 44 years ago, a socialist predicted what was happening and what was about to happen in America. This is what Orwell wrote. The old civilizations claimed that they were founded on love and justice. Ours is founded on hatred. He said, in our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. Everything else, we shall destroy everything. He said, we have cut the links between child and parent, and between man, and between man and woman. He said, no one dares trust a wife or a child or a friend any longer. But in the future, there will be no wives and no friends. Children will be taken from their mothers at birth. The sex instinct will be eradicated. Procreation will be, I'm sorry, the thing's not advancing. I got to wait for it to cycle. Okay. Children will be taken from their parents at birth, their mothers at birth. He said the sex instinct will be eradicated. Procreation will be an annual formality like the renewal of a ration card. There will be no laughter except the triumph over a defeated enemy. There will be no art, no literature, no science. There will be no curiosity. He said, all competing pleasures will be destroyed. I want you to know that George Orwell just described the New World Order. George Orwell just described the New World Order that George Bush spoke about. The New World Order of Orwell is the New World Order of George Bush. And to show you that what Mr. Orwell talked about is happening, let me refer you to an action taken by the United Nations. On January the 26th, 1990, the United Nations formally signed a comprehensive document with the stated purpose of protecting the children worldwide from tyranny and exploitation. This is a picture on the front row, a little bit off to the left, of then President George Bush attending the conference. More than 70 heads of state gathered in New York to approve the document, and George Bush was there. The article says this: in the days before the summit, both houses of the U.S. Congress hurriedly passed resolutions calling on President Bush to sign the convention and then send it to the Senate for ratification before attending the summit. Although he voiced support for the convention, George Bush did not sign it, but the United Nations did. This document is called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and it contains 30 articles. I'm going to read just 4 of them to show you that the purpose of this convention is to further erode the family as a unit. Let's read 4 of the articles approved by the United Nations. Article 13 grants your child freedom of expression and the right to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds in the form of art or other media of the child's choice. Let's say that you discover that your son, and for the purpose of saving time, I'm going to refer to all children in this discussion in the male gender. Let's say that your son has started reading pornography and you don't believe that he should. You can't object, because to do so would deny him of the right to receive ideas of all kinds. Let's say that you discover that he has rented X-rated movies to view on your VCR in your home, and you don't think it is good for him to view this material. The United Nations does not want you to deny him his right to seek all kinds of information. So you go to jail and the state takes your son. Article 14 guarantees freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. If your child wishes to worship with the neighborhood family of another faith, or if he doesn't wish to join with you as you practice your faith, you cannot prevent him from attending those other services. You can't require that he attend your services with the rest of your family. Let's say that he starts going to a satanic mass as his choice of religion, and you object. You can't stop him because he has the right of religious freedom. Article 15 prohibits any restriction on a child's freedom of association, except as is necessary for national security. You cannot restrict his right to associate with people you don't approve of, but the government can if they draft him and put him into the army. In other words, they can force him to associate or restrict his right to associate in the army, but you can't if he joins a street gang that you don't approve of, for instance. Notice that the current argument about allowing straights to associate with gays in the armed forces is a forced association of those who don't want to share toilet facilities with gays. Sounds like the United Nations and not the government of the United States is mandating that gays and straights live together in the armed forces. The government can force him to associate with those you wouldn't want him to associate with for public safety or for other reasons. They can jail him for crimes that you were unable to prevent him from committing and then force him to associate with people you couldn't prevent him with associating with. Article 16 grants absolute right of privacy to any child, including privacy from his or her parents. Let's say that you suspect that your son has hidden some drug paraphernalia in his room, and you want to search his room and locate it. You can't do that because he has the right to privacy in your home. Notice that the room that your son occupies now belongs to your son and not to you. It is your home, but it is his room. Why does the United Nations offer these ideas? There is only one purpose. The purpose of the United Nations is to destroy universally the family so that the New World Order, which is rapidly approaching, will succeed. And there were some in the United States Senate who wanted the family unit to be destroyed. They wanted this resolution passed. Everyone who listens to television knows that child abuse is rampant. Parents all over the country are bashing their children to such an extent that society has begun to respond. Law number 603.1 in New Hampshire defines child abuse as any intentional striking of a minor by any method whatsoever, including an open hand. So if the parent wishes to spank their child in New Hampshire, it is now against the law. So the child who acts intolerably cannot be punished by spanking as a method of improving behavior. Discipline will become obsolete. Only the society will have the right to discipline your wayward son. They will have the right to jail him after he commits some crime because he could not be disciplined by you as a young child. So it becomes important now to examine why it is that we as children generally lived with our parents as we were growing up. And secondly, why our parents were one man and one woman. And it's simply because our parents were free to choose and they could have chosen not to live that way. So the question is, why did they choose to live that way? And the answer is very simple. They chose to believe in a God. And because they chose to believe that that God wanted them to live that way. Because our parents generally believed that the God of the Bible made the family and that he wanted that family to be one man and one woman. And that he wanted the parents to raise that child themselves. And that they were to discipline that child so that he would grow up to be a decent and moral citizen. We are certainly free to choose not to live as man and wife. We are certainly free to choose not to have our children live with us as parents. And if we eliminate the concept of religion and the concept that there is a God, we will feel no guilt if we do these things considered to be a sin by religion. If we eliminate God and religion, we can choose to live another way. And that other way is called the New World Order. Why must we have a new civilization to be called the New World Order? There is a severe crisis coming. We will put a date on when these changes are coming a little later. Now let's discuss exactly what this New World Order is. We've seen that it appears to be the exact opposite of the old world order, and it is. Perhaps the best summary of this New World Order was offered by Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, a French writer and socialist who wrote this in the 1850s. He wrote, this socialist, our principle is atheism in religion, meaning there will be no worship of the God of the Bible in the future, anarchy in politics, meaning there will be no restraints on the people by any government in the future, and no property in the economic sphere, meaning there will be no right to private property. We'll connect all of this in a few minutes, but what he described is the New World Order. Mr. Proudhon understood. And the next question I'd like to examine is why there are some who believe that we must change our way of living. Why must we have a new civilization? One who answered that question was B.F. Skinner, chairman of the psychology department at Harvard University. He has been called the most influential psychologist of our times. So when he speaks, we are taught that we should listen. He has written a book entitled Beyond Freedom and Dignity, in which he writes this. Hold on, America. Listen to this. We can no longer afford freedom, so it must be replaced with control over man, his conduct, and his culture. Why must we abolish freedom? Because freedom has enabled us, Americans, to literally destroy the world. For example, we've caused pollution in the environment. We've overpopulated the planet. And this overpopulation has caused famines, and that has starved millions of people all over the world. We, in the industrialized free world, have allowed the free enterprise system to enable the rich to steal all of the property from the poor. Marriages are ending in divorce. Child abuse is rampant. Banks and savings and loans are failing all over America. And corruption in business and government is everywhere. Now, we do not have to live this way. This can all change. A new civilization has to be created to replace the old civilization. A new civilization will end all of these abuses, and the new civilization is called the New World Order. But those who want the New World Order will not tell us that they were the ones who caused the problems in the first place. It has been reported that the students at Stanford University in California had a rally in which they were asked to chant, "Hey, hey, ho, ho, Western Civ has got to go." They were not demanding that the administration of the university stop the teaching of a course known as Western Civ 101A. They were talking about the very way all of us live our lives. So the demand for change is everywhere, and change is coming. Another group of people are also looking for a change, are also looking for a new world order. This is a book written by a witch entitled An ABC of Witchcraft, Past and Present. And on page 15 of her book, this witch says, people are advancing towards a new society. Notice that the author does not say that this new society is called the New World Order, but the author says that a new society is coming. And secondly, notice that she claims that the future she envisions is an advancement over the old society. But we, the people, don't want these changes to a new civilization. We're going to have to be tricked or deceived into accepting them. And here's the way we're going to make the change. I'd like to return now to the book written by Aldous Huxley entitled Brave New World Revisited. He told us this in that book. In the end, they, meaning the people, will lay their freedom at our feet. Notice that Mr. Huxley was claiming to be one of those in charge because he said our feet, meaning the feet of the controllers, and to say to us, make us your slaves, but feed us. So Mr. Huxley felt that he was one of them, one of these controllers. What he was saying was that we, the people, are going to get hungry, and when we do get hungry, we would demand these changes. We are going to surrender our freedoms to the controllers for some food, but it doesn't have to be a famine. They could use many other alternative plans. It could be an economic collapse to make us give up our freedoms. It could be a nuclear terrorist attack. It could be a supposed threat from these so-called UFOs. It could be a major environmental disaster. But the point is that we, the people, will ask them to give us the New World Order in trade for our freedoms. That is what Mr. Huxley said in his book. So there is a planned calamity coming, perhaps a famine, to convince us to give up our freedoms. We are going to be told that that will be the only way to meet the crisis. But he is not the only one talking about dramatic change. Benjamin Graham has written about this, And I would like to refer to another quote in his book entitled The Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom. Here's what Benjamin Creme wrote. We are moving into a period of climax leading to events which will fundamentally alter life as we know it. Tremendous changes are taking place in all departments of life, preparatory to the establishment of entirely new modes of social living and relationship. He went on to write about the reorganization of our political, economic, and social life. And on page 33 of his book, and that is also symbolic for reasons I'll explain later, he called these tremendous changes the New World Order. So now that I've examined some of the thoughts of those in favor of creating this New World Order, it would next be important to ask and then answer the question as to when it is to arrive. Have those in favor of these changes given us an official date of arrival when this New World Order is going to start? And unfortunately, they have. Aldous Huxley, for one, answered that question when he wrote this in his book in the year 1958. He wrote, "The 21st century will be the era of the world controllers." The year 2000, meaning the beginning of the 21st century, is just 5.5 or 6 years from now. And for the purists in the viewing audience, I know that you are probably saying that the 21st century does not start until the year 2001. I will agree with you, but I would like to show you that this is not how those who reckon time for this conspiracy calculated. In any event, until I do directly discuss the calculations about the year 2000, I will just say that the time is getting closer. Let me summarize all that we've learned so far. We haven't covered all of these points during this video, but those we haven't discussed are inside my book entitled The New World Order. This is what we've covered or will cover in the book, or even cover in later parts of this lecture. The old world is coming to an end. It will be replaced with the new way of doing things, and this new way of doing things will be called the New World Order. The United States will play the major role in bringing this New World Order to the world. Adolf Hitler, the National Socialists, supported the New World Order. The Communists also support the goal of the planners. George Bush wanted the same New World Order that Adolf Hitler, the Communists, and other socialists want. The majority of the people will not readily accept the New World Order, but will be deceived into accepting it by two strategies. One, those in favor of the changes will have become seated in the very thrones of power, generally without the public realizing that fact. Secondly, the old world order will be destroyed all at once after a huge catastrophe, one that was planned by this conspiracy. Let's go back to our list now. The basic tenets of Christianity, which were the base of the old world order, will be replaced with a new way of doing things. These changes to the New World Order are coming shortly, so that the entire structure will be in place by the year 2000. Before I continue, I would like to say this. From this point on, I'll be talking as an historian, not as a Bible student. I happen to be a Bible-believing Christian, but you will notice that what I will be explaining as an historian and researcher will sound like what some Bible readers believe the Bible says about the future. I am aware of that, but I am presenting this information from the pages of history, from your newspapers and magazines, and from the books written by those who support the goals of the New World Order. So please remember that I am saying these things as an historian, not as a Bible student. I would like now to discuss how we, the people in the world, are going to be deceived. Adam Weishaupt, the founder of a secret society known as the Illuminati in the year 1776, answered that question. He wrote, "Of all the means that I know to lead men, the most effectual is a concealed mystery." Weishaupt was telling us that they could control men through the use of concealed mysteries. These planners are concealing mysteries from us. Certain men are hiding the future of the world in concealed mysteries, and it would be helpful to answer the question of where this secret is kept. Arthur Edward Wade, a prolific writer on secret societies and another member of the Masonic Lodge, has written this. Beneath the broad tide of human history, there flow the stealthy undercurrents of the secret societies, which frequently determine in the depths the changes that take place upon the surface. So Mr. Waite was telling us that the secret societies are the key to understanding both the past and the future. So we must explore secret societies to understand the New World Order. Someone else who tried to warn us about secret societies was George Orwell. This socialist was supposedly an opponent of big government, and those who say that point out that he wrote a novel called 1984 about the excesses of government. In that novel, he had one of his characters join a secret society, and Mr. Orwell wrote about the oath that the initiate in his story had to take. He had his initiate answer these questions. Are you prepared to give your life, to commit murder, to commit acts of sabotage which may cause the death of hundreds of innocent people? Are you prepared to betray your country to foreign powers? Are you prepared to cheat, to forge, to blackmail, to corrupt the minds of children, to distribute habit-forming drugs? Are you prepared to encourage prostitution, to disseminate venereal diseases? Are you prepared to do anything which is likely to cause demoralization and weaken the power of the people? Are you prepared to commit suicide if and when we order you to do so? Notice that this was written in 1949, yet this oath is describing what is happening all over America. And the reason it is happening is because secret societies administer a similar oath to thousands of people every year all over this nation. And these secret societies are changing the face of America because they are doing exactly what they've taken an oath to do, and that is to weaken the power of the people. And Orwell answers the question as to what the result of all this secrecy is. He says this on page 220 of his book. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. So that is what I will be talking about during this lecture. A boot stamping on a human face forever. The first thing I want to explain is the fact that there has been a secret inside past religions and the secret societies that has not been revealed to mankind. Albert G. Mackey, a leader in the Masonic Order, one of the most important secret societies in the world, wrote this 2-volume set called the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. In that encyclopedia, he wrote, each of the pagan gods had, beside the public and open, a secret worship paid to him, to which none were admitted, but those who had been selected by the preparatory ceremonies called initiation. This secret worship was termed the mysteries. And so what Mr. Mackey was saying was that most religions in the past had two worships, a visible worship and a secret worship, and that not all inside the circle of believers knew the secret. Perhaps the best way to illustrate that point is through the use of a point inside a circle. Everyone on the page of the world is on this illustration. The population who do not believe in the God of the particular religion are outside the circle. Those who believe in the particular God are inside the circle, and those who know that the God being worshipped is not the God the rest of the believers believe in are inside the dot. So just as Mr. Mackey said, there are two different types of believers, those who do not know the secret and those who do. So what he was saying was that there were two layers inside the worship of every major god of the past. Worshippers of the god known as Osiris, the Egyptian god, Bacchus, the Roman god, Hercules, the Greek god, Krishna, the Hindu god, and Thor, the Scandinavian god, for example, all had two worships inside the circle of believers, one visible and one invisible. One was public and open, and the other one was secret and concealed. This secret worship was not periodic in the past, it has been constant. It is not new, it is 6,000 years old, as we shall see as we continue studying the material, and it is worldwide. There are evidences of this secret worship of another God all over the world, in every culture and in every time period. Those who know the secret identity of the true God conceal their secret in symbols. This is once again Manly P. Hall, who is perhaps the most prolific writer on the subject of secrets and symbols during his lifetime, and this is a book entitled The Secret Teachings of All Ages. In that book, he told us symbolism fulfilled the dual office of concealing the sacred truths from the uninitiated and revealing to those qualified to understand the symbols. Notice that the use of symbols has two purposes: conceal the truth from the public and relay information to others qualified to understand them. We, the people, see the symbol, but do not concern ourselves because we do not understand that it has a hidden meaning. Those initiated into the secret worship understand them, and we do not. And these hidden symbols are everywhere, as we shall soon see. The next area I would like to discuss is the organizations and individuals who are going to give us this New World Order. Alice Bailey, one of the leaders of a thing called the New Age movement, reported that she was aware of a group she called the Hierarchy that possessed enormous power. She wrote that she had a friendly being that spoke to her, and that being claimed that he had actually visited this group during one of its meetings. This being told Alice to write this: as one of the masters, unknown to you, remarked at a meeting of the Hierarchy a few weeks ago. So she is claiming that this being was invited to a meeting of the conspirators and that she does not know who they were. But whereas she might not know who they are, she answered the question of how important they were in her book entitled The Externalization of the Hierarchy. And this is what she said: the hierarchy directs world events so that the unfolding consciousness may express itself through development and adequate social, political, religious, and economic reforms. They, this hierarchy, give direction, they throw a light. And she said they definitely influence the tide of human affairs. According to Miss Bailey, these masters have been working for what they call the good of mankind for millions of years. She wrote this: the hierarchy has stood in silence behind world events, occupied with the following work, a work which will eventually be carried on exoterically, meaning the hierarchy will work out in the open in the future, instead of esoterically, meaning that they will cease operating in a concealed or hidden manner. The conspirators are one day going to release the information on what they have been up to for many countless generations. And I must add that George Bush started this process of identification in August of 1990. So now it is possible to ask and then answer the question as to whether or not we can know who these masters are. Alice Bailey says this elsewhere in her book entitled The Externalization of the Hierarchy. She wrote this: the three main channels through which the preparation for this new age, and you can use the two phrases, the New World Order and the New Age, interchangeably, because the New Age is the New World Order. So she said this New Age is going on, the preparation for this New Age is going on, and it might be regarded as the church, the Masonic fraternity, and the educational field. She is saying that the church, meaning the Christian church, the secret society known as the Masons, and the public school system are all working together to bring us the New World Order. During this lecture today, we are going to concentrate only on the Masons. The others are in my book and videos. She continued on page 511 of her book to explain just how important Masonry is to the future of the world. She wrote, the Masonic movement will meet the needs of those who can and should wield power. It is the custodian of the law. It is the home of the mysteries and the seat of initiation. It holds in its symbolism the ritual of deity, and the work of salvation is pictorially preserved in its work. The methods of deity are demonstrated in the temples, its temples, and under the all-seeing eye, the work can go forward. It, meaning Masonry, is a far more occult organization than can be realized and is intended to be the training school for the coming advanced occultists. Alice Bailey failed to tell our readers who these hidden masters were, but one of the New Age believers did tell us at least who one of the people were. Now, we've quoted Benjamin Crumb before. He is a believer in the New Age religion, and he's written a book entitled The Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom. He told us that this man was one of the members of the hierarchy. Benjamin Crumb identified Karl Marx, the founder of so-called communism, as being a member of the hierarchy. And this is what he wrote on page 100 of his book. Karl Marx, the communist, was a member of the hierarchy. Notice that he was saying that the founder of communism was helping direct world events. This fact will be confirmed in another book that Mr. Crumb wrote, and I'll be discussing that in a few minutes. Mr. Crumb repeated the important point that Alice Bailey made. The Masons are deeply involved in the events of the past. Mr. Crumb wrote, the new religion will manifest, for instance, through organizations like Masonry. In Freemasonry is embedded the core of the secret of the occult mysteries. So the Masons are right in the middle of this movement to bring the world a new world order. And Mr. Crumb and Miss Bailey are telling us that. It is now appropriate to discuss the fact that Benjamin Crumb is a believer in a person that he calls Lord Maitreya. Lord Maitreya is the one person called that is the Jesus for the Christians, another Buddha called Lord Maitreya for the Buddhists, Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, Krishna for the Hindus, and the Messiah for the Jews. Notice that according to Mr. Crumb, all of the religions of the world are waiting for the return of their leader, and that the leader is now on the face of the earth, and that he is the one leader that all religions are looking for. He claims that he is the head of a group of enlightened men known as the spiritual hierarchy of masters. And elsewhere, Mr. Crumb describes that hierarchy as being the brotherhood of light. He also told us that he will be the head of a new world religion, which eventually Maitreya will inaugurate. He went on to tell us that the new religion will be somewhat different from what we know about religion. He said initiation will be central to the new world religion. So all who accept the new religion will have to be initiated. But I must be fair to Benjamin Crumb. In the back of his book, on pages 373 to 393, Mr. Crumb lists the 600 great and good men and women who've been initiated into the ancient mysteries. And it can't be so bad, because this list contains the names of so many of the greatest men and women of the past who've been initiated into the new religion so far. I'm going to give you some of those great and good men and women, and we'll read from his own preparation, his own list of these people who've been initiated. We'll do it in groups of 3. These are the people, in part, of the 600 who Mr. Crumb believes have been initiated into the mystery religion. Aristotle, Johann Sebastian Bach, Ludwig von Beethoven, Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, Johann Brahms, the composer, Charles Chaplin, the famous comedic star, the actor, Ralph Waldo Emerson, one too fast there, let's go back. I can't go back. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the writer, Benjamin Franklin, the American statesman, and Danny Kaye, the actor. Also John Kennedy, the American president, John Lennon of the Beatles, Abraham Lincoln, the American president. These men have all been initiated into the mystery religion. Franklin Roosevelt, President of the United States, William Shakespeare, the writer, George Bernard Shaw, the writer. He went on to say that Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon religion, Mark Twain, the writer, George Washington, the American president, Julius Caesar, the Roman dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu, the Romanian communist tyrant, Chou Enlai, who murdered as many as 80 million Chinese in the brutal Chinese Communist Revolution in China, all have been initiated. Aleister Crowley, the Satanist, was initiated. Frederick Engels, the supposed father of communism, along with Karl Marx, Che Guevara, the Cuban communist, were all initiates of the ancient mystery religion. Adolf Hitler, the head of the German government, who planned the Second World War that killed 53 million people so that he could create the New World Order. Ho Chi Minh was initiated. the brutal Vietnamese communists who staged the war in Vietnam that killed 56,000 American soldiers and countless Vietnamese, Cambodians, and Laotians. Ayatollah Khomeini, the brutal head of the Iranian government, were initiates. 3 more were Judas Iscariot, the betrayer of Jesus Christ, Nikita Khrushchev, the communist who starved millions of people during the Communist Revolution in Russia in 1917, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, the communist who planned the extermination of as many as 40 million people in the Russian Communist Revolution of 1970, were all initiates. Mao Tse-tung, who assisted Zhou Enlai in murdering as many as 80 million Chinese in the Chinese Communist Revolution of 1923 to 1949. Karl Marx, the so-called father of communism. Benito Mussolini, the head of the Italian government during World War II, who aided Adolf Hitler. Napoleon, the head of the French government that killed millions during his European war. Cecil Rhodes, the teacher of President Bill Clinton, was an initiate. And lastly, Joseph Stalin, the brutal Russian communist dictator. So the initiation ceremonies that we will all have to take to live in the New World Order can't be so bad, since good people like Adolf Hitler and Ayatollah Khomeini have gone through it before and were initiates. So this New World Order sounds like fun. You might remember that one of the names that I read in that list of the initiates was John Lennon, one of the singers in the rock and roll group known as the Beatles. To show you why he was an initiate, I would like to read you the lyrics of a classically beautiful song he wrote called Imagine. This song was written in 1971 and it is still being played on radio stations even today. This song tells the world why John Lennon was an initiate. And I want you to know that countless of my supporters have requested that I not sing the words to the song, but that I just read them. So to save your ears from environmental damage, I've agreed to their request. I will only read the words. The words from the song Imagine, written by John Lennon. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us, only sky. So here Mr. Lennon attacks the idea of a heaven and a hell. He is obviously writing about the need to destroy religion, which teaches the existence of these places. He went on in this beautiful song, imagine all the people living for today. Here Mr. Lennon, the initiate, tells us that there is no tomorrow to be concerned about. There is only today. Don't concern yourself about tomorrow because there is no tomorrow worth planning for. He went on to write, imagine there's no countries. Here Mr. Lennon tells us that the New World Order will have no national boundaries, that the world will be under a one-world government. It isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Mr. Lennon's song, Imagine. So here Mr. Lennon combines his attack on nationalism and religion. It is unfortunate that Mr. Lennon had not studied the conspiratorial view of history, because if he had, he would have learned that nations and religions do not cause wars as he thought conspirators do. But here he was admitting that he has bought the lie of the conspiracy that religion and national borders cause wars. He went on in his song, imagine all the people living life in peace. These are the only words in his classically beautiful song that I agree with. But his solution to the wars in the world is the New World Order, not exposing the conspiracy that has caused them all. Mr. Lennon's song goes on, imagine no possessions. Here Mr. Lennon attacks the idea of private property. I will show you why this is in a few minutes. John Lennon wanted to abolish private property. He did not want you to own anything. But I have to be fair and give Mr. Lennon credit. John Lennon sold all of his possessions, gave away all of his millions, and lived like a hermit on the side of a mountain in England. He showed us that he truly believed in this concept, that there should be no possessions. What he was saying was that he didn't want you to have the right to private property, but he wasn't about to give up his right to own private property. Just like all of the others who believe in this New World Order, John Lennon was a hypocrite. The song continues, I wonder if you can, no need for greed or hunger, no a brotherhood of man. He wrote, imagine all the people sharing all the world. Here he shows the listeners that he is talking about a new world order. And he finished with this: "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one." Mr. Lenin apparently had not thought how he could get those who believed in religion and the right to private property to agree with those who did not believe in religion and private property. Mr. Lenin was a stupid man, like all of the other New World Order dreamers. Their utopia is unattainable as long as there are some men who believe in private property and some who do not. Here is another evidence that John Lennon was an initiate and that he believed in communism. This is the cover of an album made by the Beatles called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. As you can see, the cover is made up of a series of portraits or pictures of all sorts of people. I once heard that one of the Beatles say that they put only those people that they admired in the scene behind them. And one of the most admired men is in the picture is shown behind the green arrow. And one of the people the Beatles admired the most was Karl Marx, the communist and fellow initiate. The Beatles admitted that they admired the communist terrorist Karl Marx. The Beatles admitted that his ideas were not the most dangerous ideas in the world. They admired Karl Marx, the man who's responsible for the murders of millions of innocent people. They put him in a crowd of admired people. Yes, it is true, John Lennon was an initiate into the secret worship of Lucifer. This is supposed to be that leader of all of these religions, and he is called Lord Maitreya. This picture was taken of him after he showed up in Nairobi, Kenya, in Africa, on June the 11th, 1988, at the specific request of the nun shown elsewhere in this picture. This is another picture of this man who claims that he is Jesus Christ. This photograph of Maitreya was published in the newspaper called The Emergence, put out by those who believe that he is the Christ. Benjamin Creme has been telling the world that Maitreya descended from his retreat in the Himalayan mountains, where he has lived for thousands of years, on the 8th of July, 1977. And then on July 19th, 1977, he came to London, England, where he is living today. According to Mr. Creme, this Maitreya knows what the problem is. The newspaper called Emergence quotes Creme, or quotes Maitreya, saying that the reason people are starving all over the world is the commercialization created by market forces. He is blaming all of the world's problems on the free enterprise system. Apparently, he is unfamiliar with the workings of his fellow initiate, Cecil Rhodes, the teacher of President Bill Clinton, who knows that the problems of this world are created by a master conspiracy in the world. Yet Lord Maitreya claims to be God. Yet he doesn't know that a master conspiracy has been planning wars, revolutions, and depressions all over the world. Some God he is. He goes on to write, market forces are the forces of wickedness, confusion, and chaos, and its children are competition and comparison. A little later, I will show you that this Christ is a communist. He wants to abolish private property. Benjamin Creme wrote, quote, his task and that of his disciples, the masters of the wisdom, will be to inaugurate the age of reason. Someday soon, on what he calls the Day of Declaration, Lord Maitreya will mentally overshadow all of humanity simultaneously. Each of us, not only those watching or listening, will hear his words inwardly, telepathically, in our own language. Mr. Creme told us how he's going to appear to all of mankind. He, meaning Maitreya, will acknowledge his true status and be invited to speak to the world through radio and television. The radio and television networks of the world will be linked up, and he will make his appeal. By mentally overshadowing all mankind simultaneously, he will come into telepathic rapport with all humanity everywhere, and we shall hear his words silently entering our minds in our own language. Notice that Lord Maitreya is coming to speak on worldwide radio and television. There are parts of the world that do not have radio and television, so Lord Maitreya cannot reach all people at the same time using the airwaves. Then Mr. Krem says that Lord Maitreya will then mentally overshadow everyone simultaneously. If he has the power to do this without radio and television, why does he need to use radio and television? If he uses the radio and television networks, he will not reach everyone. If he can't reach everyone, how can he mentally overshadow everyone? This is contradictory. Apparently, no one is to question what Mr. Krem says. It appears that Mr. Krem is saying two things at the same time, each one contradictory to the other. Mr. Krem gave us some clue as to when these dramatic changes will occur. He said this on June the 23rd, 1977. Slowly, gradually, over the next 25 years, the hierarchy will externalize itself. 1977 plus 25 years is the year 2002. That date is close to the year 2000, and that date is extremely significant, as we shall see later in this lecture. So if the Masonic lodges are to bring us these new changes, it becomes important to study them. And it is not an impossible task, even though they claim to be secret. They have made their position clear in a variety of books written by a group of very high-ranking Masons. So I'd now like to start my study of the Masonic fraternity. I'd first like to explain that I am not a member of the Masons, nor have I ever been a member of the Masons. Every Masonic book that I will quote from during this lecture was written by one of their official writers and is not secret. I have found many of these books in a typical bookstore selling new books or in a used bookstore, and none of what I will be covering is secret. However, I must be clear. Many of these authors conceal the truth in symbols or inside words that have more than one meaning. But once you understand the concealed language, their writing becomes clear and understandable. I first started studying the Masonic Lodge in about 1976 and took the results of my preliminary research out to the American people during a nationwide lecture tour in 1985, 86, and 87. My book entitled The New World Order that I published in 1990 was the first one that I can find that exposed the Masonic Lodge for what it was from their own material. Apparently, the Masons have noticed. This is a photocopy of a cover of the national magazine called The Northern Light, published by the Northern Jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. On pages 20 and 21 of their February 1993 issue, Thomas W. Jackson, a 33rd degree Mason, meaning that he is a high-ranking member of the Lodge, reviewed the book entitled The New World Order, written by Pat Robertson. Mr. Robertson wrote his book after my book by the same title was in his hands. So this reviewer was not reviewing Pat Robertson's book, he was reviewing mine. Near the end of his review, Mr. Jackson made this comment. The Freemasonry historically was composed of the retarded, the illiterates, and the misfits of society. I might be able to comprehend the attitude of men like Robertson, meaning Pat Robertson, Hawley, meaning Dr. James L. Hawley, a medical doctor who a short time ago attempted to get the Southern Baptist Church to renounce Masonry, John Ankerberg, meaning John Ankerberg, a television evangelist who has a nationwide television program which has on occasion produced programs exposing the lower layer Masonic Lodge initiation ceremonies, Epperson, meaning me, Ralph Epperson, and others in their fanatical devotion to attacks against Freemasonry and Freemasons. So Pat Robertson, James Hawley, John Ankerberg, and Ralph Epperson have arrived. I am pleased that the Masons recognize that my book is having an effect on their membership. Yes, it is true. I have arrived. I am known by my enemies. I was mentioned again in another Masonic publication. This is called the American Masonic Review in their winter 1993 edition. They reprinted a speech by Gary Leazor, I guess, that he delivered to the Southeast Masonic Conference on August the 6th, 1993, in which he discussed his conclusion that Gary Caw, A. Ralph Epperson, William T. Still, and Pat Robertson are well-known conspiracists who see Freemasonry as part of a worldwide conspiracy. I'm honored to be included in his list of those telling the truth about the Masonic Order. To start my study of the Masons, I would like to go back to 1826 and talk about Captain William Morgan. He claimed that he had been a Mason for over 30 years when he wrote this book entitled Freemasonry Exposed in 1826. And in 1827, Captain William Morgan was murdered by some Masons in New York. The captain had paid with his life for exposing some of the secrets of the Masonic Lodge. Captain Morgan knew that as a Mason, he had taken a blood oath that he would be killed by the Masons if he revealed the secrets of the Masonic Lodge. This is Duncan's ritual, a copy of the rituals for the first 7 degrees of the Masonic Order. Captain Morgan, like all other third-degree Masons, took an oath during the third-degree ceremony. This is what the captain swore himself to. All this I promise, meaning here that he will agree to the commitments he made just a few minutes before. All this I promise, binding myself under no less penalty than that of having my body severed in two, my bowels taken from thence and burned to ashes, that no more remembrance might be had of so vile and wicked a wretch as I would be, should I ever knowingly violate this, my Master Mason's obligation. So Captain Morgan, like any other third-degree Mason who discovered the truth about the Masons, faced a real quandary. Should he tell the truth and risk his own death, or should he remember the oath he had taken and remain silent? The captain chose to tell the truth. And true to their word, the Masons murdered Captain Morgan shortly after he published his book. This is a picture of the statue erected in memory of Captain William Morgan in Batavia, New York. This is a slide of the base of that monument showing clearly that the Captain Morgan is the person depicted thereon. And this is what is written on one side of the base of the statue. The statue was erected by volunteer contributions from over 2,000 persons residing in Canada, Ontario, and 26 of the United States and Territories. This is a slide of another side of the monument, and it has this written on it: sacred to the memory of William Morgan, a native of Virginia, a captain in the War of 1812, a respectable citizen of Batavia, and a martyr to the freedom of writing, printing, and speaking the truth. He was abducted from near this spot in the year 1826 by the Freemasons and murdered for revealing the secrets of that order. Another side of the monument reads, the court records of Genesee County and files of the Batavia Advocate kept in the recorder's office contain the history of the events that caused the erection of this monument. And to show the world that Captain Morgan found the truth about the Masonic Order, this is what he wrote in part in his book and as recorded on the foreside of the statue. This is in his book and on the foreside. The bane. Now, we do not use this word in our modern vocabulary, but it is defined as the ruin. So Captain Morgan is saying that the ruin of our civil institutions is to be found in Masonry, already powerful and daily becoming more so. I owe my country an exposure of its dangers. So Captain Morgan risked his own life because he saw that the Masonic Lodge was going to change our civil institutions, meaning the very way we lived our lives, meaning our civilization. And in 1827, the anger caused by the captain's murder caused millions of people in America to form this nation's first third party, other than the Republicans or Democrats, in 1832. They called themselves the Anti-Mason Party and ran candidates for the presidency and vice presidency of the United States and got 7% of the national vote. Mackey's Encyclopedia, one of the great Masonic books of all time, tells us what the Masons state. Tells us that the Masons state that the object of the anti-Mason Masonic Party was to deprive Masonry of the support which it derives from the power and patronage of the executive branch of the United States government. So Albert Mackey, truly one of the great Masonic researchers in the world, tells us that the Masons were concerned that they would be deprived of the power of the presidency. The implication is that the Masons control the presidency and that Captain Morgan was attempting to deprive the Masons of that control. Notice that Captain Morgan said they were using that control for the purpose of destroying America's civilization. Each of us has to decide if Captain Morgan was right or Albert Mackey was right. And I am attempting to prove that the good captain was right because quite simply, as I will continue to prove during the course of this lecture, Masonry is out to destroy our civilization. I'm going to prove that in their own material. Going back to Mr.